Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast. This is the preview show. I'm Manu and Stefan. He's Stefan Biankowski. And Stefan, 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since we've done this. How's it going? Bundesliga football will be back on Friday. How excited are you?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I've missed it dearly. And I mean, internationals, football is always fun. Got to see Scotland qualify for the European Championship. So, you know, it wasn't a bad break by any means. But yeah, nothing's quite like having a domestic football back. And I think this weekend should be a fun one. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. It should be a ton of fun. And I think we've, before we get into it, couple homework things that we need to get out of the way, right? I'm going to go to the ad in a moment. But you just set up a WhatsApp channel for Gegenpressing. So that's new.
Yeah, we have, during the international break, we've been busy trying to expand our channels on different social media. So we're both now on Threads, on Blue Sky as well. As always, people can follow us on Substack. Even if you don't subscribe or pay for a subscription, you can still follow us there because they have a kind of Twitter function called Notes. And today we've also set up a WhatsApp channel, which is where you can kind of follow along with everything we post, podcasts, newsletters, and things like that. So if you're looking for a link to that, I'll stick it in the show notes so you can jump in there. Hopefully that link will take you to your WhatsApp app. But as I said, we're also on Threads, we're on Blue Sky, and Instagram as well, I suppose. We're also on Instagram as well.
Yeah, just wait and see who emerges victorious from the battle of social media as X, formerly known as Twitter. I know you love when I say that.
do you know who I hope wins?
Who do you hope is going to win?
I hope none of them win, actually. I hope the internet just kind of falls apart and we can go back to just picking up a nice Sunday newspaper or something every week. And then we could just turn the Gegenpressing into like a quarterly magazine / radio show, and then that'll suit me just fine.
Okay, well, on that note, it's not quite the dystopian future that you're hoping for, but apparently people are going back to going directly to homepages rather than looking for them on social media. That's been the latest study. I've
also seen that apparently book sales have been rising steadily over the last couple of years as well, because people miss the kind of physical books, which I can totally agree with. I've got a house full of books because I can't stand e-readers or the internet.
I have a Kindle, but I also bought 2 physical books on my trip to Montreal, and I'm reading them simultaneously with my Kindle because I'm a madman. But let's skip all that and let's go to the ad, and then we can chat about all sorts of things, including football. So let's do that first. This episode of the Gegenpressing podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. It's a Texas showdown in the postseason, and BetOnline is your number one source for all your baseball wagering info, with up-to-the-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals for the NFL and college football at your fingertips with BetOnline, real-time updates on statistics, news, and odds. We have everything you need to stay up to speed on each LCS all the way through the World Series. Those are the semifinals, if you don't know what baseball World Series is. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Don't forget to use your promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. It's a good thing I got into baseball this season, Stefan, because otherwise this would have all been cold for me. And it probably was for you.
Yep, more or less.
I'm sure that people betting on baseball have a pretty decent idea of what I just said there. But that's fine. Anyways, back to the soccer or football or whatever you like to call it. Want to point out this show is brought to you in association with Get German Football News. I guess with X dying, I don't know where they're posting their stuff these days, but you can check out their homepage directly as well. And they're always so kind, spreading the news of this podcast and sharing it. So I want to give them a shout out right away. And Stefan, before we go to the actual Bundesliga games, there's one other thing I wanted to point out, and I think this is really, really interesting. And I wrote about it for Forbes, so by the time this podcast comes out, that article should also be out. It's the first Fortuna for Everyone initiative game on Saturday against Kaiserslautern. And that game is free for everyone. So it's a really interesting initiative. They are hoping to, rather than sell tickets, making them available for free. And then sponsors will pay for the actual home matches. And of course, they're trying to figure out ways to benefit bigger from the catering and from the merchandise. And they actually believe that they're going to make more money from that rather than selling tickets. So it's an interesting idea. If you want to get tickets for those games, you have to apply. And they're doing 3 free games this season with the hope to expanding it to a full 17 further down the road. I just wanted to give that a shout out because it is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great initiative. Kind of, obviously falls in line with the ethos of German football. And it'd be interesting to see if it works.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I can share spoke to Alexander Jobst, their chairman, yesterday, and I can share the articles. As I said, it's on Forbes, in the channel, on the Substack channel or whatever, if people want to read more about it. But I think it's hugely fascinating. And I kind of want this project to succeed because in their minds, it will provide them a financial avenue to get partners involved without them becoming investors, and remain 100% membership-run club, which is, of course, a very different pathway than most other clubs have chosen to do. So, keep an eye on that. Should be a fun game, and should be a fun game to tune into. 52,000 expected for Fortuna Düsseldorf against Kaiserslautern. That's 2 giants of German football. Yeah, I think that's going to be a great game. Anyways, Bundesliga football. Dortmund against Bremen. Stefan, neither one of us picked that as their game of the week, but it probably would have been a pretty good bet for a game of the week. What do you think here?
Yeah, I think it should be a good game to kind of get back into the kind of, bounce of things. 2 very kind of attacking teams, 2 teams who've probably appreciated the international break coming. I know Dortmund had a lot of players off on international duty, and obviously a lot of German players in North America. And, I think Bremen probably appreciated it too, just through the manner in which their season hasn't exactly, gone to plan. They've obviously picked up back-to-back defeats. Losing to Hoffenheim is probably not the worst result in the world right now because they're also doing very well. But I think that 4-2 defeat to Darmstadt is probably one that they had to spend a lot of time kind of going over the international break and trying to figure out what's going on because, even though there are 4 clubs up below them in the rankings, they're still only 2 points off the relegation spots. And, as a result, I think they'll cause Dortmund problems, but I think this should be a pretty straightforward game for Dortmund, if such a thing exists. But if it does, it'll be this game, I think. So I've gone for a 3-1 win for Dortmund.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had. I have a 3-1 win for Dortmund as well. And I echo almost everything they said. The one thing that we haven't mentioned yet on the show is the fantasy team. Don't forget to set it up, by the way. I know after 2 weeks you get rusty, which shows which we are. We forgot to mention it. But Wilku could be a really good bet here, Stefan, against his former club. You know, you
Yeah,
just know that that is the kind of game where he will score, like, pop up and score 2 or 3 goals.
Yeah, I've tactically removed Mitchell Weiser from my start 11 in anticipation of this game, so that's probably shows all the confidence I have in Werder Bremen right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, don't forget your fantasy team. I will have to do some work today on that, actually, after we get off the show. Speaking of the fantasy team, the next game is Union against Stuttgart. I will not tell anyone again to take Guirassy off their squad. Leave him on there for your own peril, or remove him, or whatever you want to do. Surely he's not going to score more goals here, is he? I mean, sooner or later, this crazy run has to stop. I don't think Stuttgart's run is going to stop though. I am still very worried about Union. I know Urs Fischer likes the international break, and but unlike previous years, there's actually quite a lot of players now in action for Union Berlin, right? So I'm not sure that's quite as much of a benefit for him than it was in the past. And I have Stuttgart here as the winner, even though it's in Berlin. 2-1 for Stuttgart. What do you think here?
Yeah, this is an interesting game, and it's definitely one to keep an eye on, just because I think, obviously just talked about Bremen and Dortmund needing an international break, but I think Union Berlin, more than just about any team in the division right now, desperately needed that break. Yeah. They've really struggled at the start of the season. I've already seen some pundits kind of, resorting back to the old XG myth.
Stop it.
I'm not sure. I like I said, I didn't buy that last time. I don't really buy it now.
No.
I think from what I could tell from their line numbers, I think Union are creating chances. Their performances aren't exactly bad. But I mean, it's just like, I think I said on the last show we talked about Union. I said if this was like Football Manager, I would have rage quit and thrown my laptop out the window by now, because whether it's in Europe or domestically, they've just conceded so many kind of crazy goals. That Braga game, for example, comes to mind, but that was not the only one. So I think the performances have perhaps overplayed the kind of crisis of the club right now. I think they just needed to get back to basics. Urs Fischer has a huge turnover of players this summer. He's still trying to get to grips with that. And I think something like an international break would have helped a lot. So yeah, this game will be an interesting test for them. I think it'll probably be beyond them, to be honest with you, just because Stuttgart are really flying high right now. And I've actually gone for a 2-0 win for Stuttgart. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Union look in this match.
Yeah. No, this is going to... this could actually be one of the best games to tune in on Saturday. So I'm really looking forward to it. Up next, Freiburg against Bochum. What do you think here?
Yeah, so I don't know. Freiburg are a team that have kind of been a wee bit kind of hot and cold. I think we had Matt on the show when you were away on your holidays in Montreal, and one of the listeners asked a question with Freiburg, and we discussed it at length. And Matt made a really good point. He thinks they're probably kind of victims to injuries right now, and not suspensions, but just players missing, because they have had a very stop-start to the season, and so much so that I'm kind of struggling to really kind of, I feel like I kind of wanted to say, right, at home against Bochum, this is the game that Freiburg should win, but I feel like right now, the way they're playing right now, I think they'll struggle. So I've actually gone for a 1-1 draw here, just because, I don't really think Bochum are world beaters right now, but I just feel like Freiburg are also really struggling.
Yeah, I've actually gone for a similar result, but I do think that Freiburg are gonna just edge it 2-1. But I do agree that, I don't know, like unlike Union Berlin, I actually do think that maybe Streich will have had some time to work with this team. A lot of the key players were on international break, right? And I think that maybe that will be just enough. And I also just, Bochum, when they don't play at home, seem to really struggle at times. So I've just gone for a Freiburg win, but I do agree it's going to be a very tight affair. All right, so up next, Stefan, that's your game of the week. El Plastico, Wolfsburg against Leverkusen. I think you'll have to do some explaining here. Although I do get it. I mean, just watching Leverkusen is a treat these days. And I think this is going to be a hugely fascinating affair, but I'll let you take it away from here. This episode of the Gegenpressing podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. It's a Texas showdown in the postseason, and BetOnline is your number one source for all your baseball wagering info, with up-to-the-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals for the NFL and college football at your fingertips with BetOnline, real-time updates on statistic, news, and odds. We have everything you need to stay up to speed on each LCS all the way through the World Series. Those are the semifinals, if you don't know what baseball World Series is. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Don't forget to use your promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be a really interesting contest between two good teams. In terms of, if you look through the fixture list of the match day, I think this is probably technically the tightest fixture. Maybe Hoffenheim, Frankfurt, I don't know. But in terms of like the quality on the pitch, the talent up front for both sides, and kinda the form that both teams have got into. So, Wolfsburg obviously lost their last game to Stuttgart before the international break, but they have won 3 out of 3 at home this season. Interestingly enough, they've never in their history won their first 4 games of the season, so this will be an interesting kind of see if they can, make some history in this match. Another interesting stat for you, which I found fascinating, is that Bayer Leverkusen have only 3 times in their history traveled to Wolfsburg as the league leaders in the Bundesliga, and on every single occasion they've lost a game. So that whole kind of Neverkusen, shooting themselves in the foot thing is really focused when it comes to this fixture. So yeah, I just think it's going to be a really fascinating game. I don't think Wolfsburg really have the talent to properly go to toe with this Leverkusen side right now, but nevertheless, I think it's going to be a really interesting test for Xabi Alonso's side. And I've gone for a 2-1 win for Leverkusen because I think it'll be a tight match. It'll be interesting to see how Leverkusen look with a lot of their players on international duty. Florian Wirtz played a lot of football for Germany against the US and Mexico, for example. It's just one example. So, yeah, I think it'll be a good test for Leverkusen, which I think will just about squeeze by and stay top of the league, but I think it'll be a fascinating match.
1999, 2001, and 2014, if you're wondering when those 3 times were when Leverkusen were first. Those were really good teams too, by the way. All 3 of them. So, yeah.
Just like this one.
Just like this one. Yikes. Let's see if history repeats itself. Although I'm with you, I actually think Leverkusen are going to win this game. And I actually went for a bit more of a decisive result than you did. I said 3-1. Although I am fascinated to see how players that went on international duties will play in this game. Both teams, of course, have lots of players on duty, right? So it's not like one has a leg up over the other. But the one thing that I always have noticed about Leverkusen is they do concede a lot of goals from set pieces, and it seems to be like every game there's one. So initially I went for like a 2-0 or like even a 3-0 here, and then I was like, no, there's going to be a Wolfsburg goal in this game. So that's maybe the only thing I want to add to your really good analysis here. But yeah, I think this is going to be a fascinating game. It's going to be hard to pick between Union and Stuttgart and Wolfsburg and Leverkusen for that particular time slot, I think, in terms of what you want to watch. Okay, so next, Hoffenheim against Frankfurt, and you're quite right, this is going to be a tight affair, but I just think that on form, Hoffenheim are going to be the team winning this game. And we've talked about this. I think Frankfurt are literally just getting by to January until when they can buy a very good striker for the money that they got for Kolomouani. And there's been some really interesting names linked, right? One name that comes up quite frequently is Santiago Jimenez, who I think would be an incredible addition. But until January, Frankfurt will have to wait for someone who can put away the goals. And I think Hoffenheim have a few players that can do exactly that. And I think that's just going to be the thing that's going to edge it for them. Plus, I need to add both Mario Götze and Kevin Trapp in Daub for Frankfurt.
Yeah, I've gone for a 2-0 win in this game for Hoffenheim. I feel like Frankfurt, they've almost got to the point where it's actually quite admirable how they haven't imploded of sorts. They're basically just doing the bare minimum very well. 1 defeat in the first 7 games. All things considered, as you said, they're just kind of crawling to January. And, if they can stay 7th, 8th, 9th by that point, then, I think they deserve a lot of credit, to be honest with you. But as you said, they're up against a good Hoffenheim side. They're probably missing some key players. This is actually Hoffenheim's best start to a Bundesliga season ever, if you can believe it or not. So, big props.
Even better than the Nagelsmann era. That's crazy.
Yeah, so props to Pellegrino Matarazzo there. But also, kind of paradoxically, they've only won one of their first 3 home games of the season. So, weirdly enough, that form at home is what seems to be holding them back, if you could say such a thing about this team right now. Which is maybe an interesting kind of, play on, the fact that maybe they're much better at kind of counter-attacking when teams kind of maybe throw more at them when they're on the road. So I think Hoffenheim will have to be careful here because, as I said, Frankfurt have kind of done a good job of kind of locking things down, playing very defensively. They've got the best defensive record in the Bundesliga. And they'll probably look to try and maybe catch Hoffenheim out. But, I think between Kramaric and Maximilian Bayer, they've got some great players in that team, and they'll be full of confidence. And they should win this one 2-0, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Both in agreement here that you're likely to expect a Hoffenheim win. I think this next one is going to be quite easy to predict, Stefan. Darmstadt against Leipzig.
Yeah, well, you say that, but...
Yeah, I know.
The interesting thing about Leipzig this season is they've put in good, big performances. We obviously saw them in the Pokal against Bayern. They went toe-to-toe with Leverkusen that first game of the season. Even though they lost that, it was a very, very tight game against, what has proven to be, the best team in Germany right now. But they've also kind of looked quite... so-so against kind of, quote-unquote lesser sides. They only scraped by Gladbach 1-0. They were held to a draw against Bochum. The Pokal match against Wien, they drew 3-2. It's as if they maybe have a degree of complacency that, they've got a lot of young, exciting players who, are desperate to kind of be a thorn in the side to Bayern Munich or Leverkusen or whatever else when they get a chance. But it's these kind of games that I feel like they have to be really careful not to slip up on and drop silly points. So I've actually gone for a 2-1 win for Leipzig. So I still think they'll get it done, but something tells me they might be a bit complacent in this game.
So I've also gone for a Darmstadt goal, but I went for a 3-1 here. And I pretty much echo everything that you say. What's going to be really interesting for me to see here is how are the young players that have gone on international duties. Like Javi Simmons played really well for the Netherlands, right? Jesko, I think, scored for Slovakia. Wait. Let me get that nationality correct. Was it Slovenia or Slovakia? Oh, man. Embarrassing myself live here on radio. Slovenia, of course. Either way, good performance by him. So, I'm kind of curious to see how these young players, how they will do, going on international duty and then coming back. And I think that's quite quite a difficult thing to do, right? So, but I still think that Leipzig have just too much quality to over Darmstadt, even though Darmstadt have performed way better than anyone expected. So should be an interesting game. All right, so the Saturday Topspiel, designated by the DFL, don't think it's either one for Topspiels, and I think this one is actually going to be. Although Stefan, Mainz has made things difficult in the past for Bayern Munich. Need to point that out. I don't think that's going to be the case this time. I think Bayern are going to win this game 3-0.
Yeah, I think.
Or more.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually gone for a 3-1 win in this game for Bayern, and it's
Looks like Neuer is going to be back, eh?
Yeah, which would be interesting. I mean, maybe that's probably Mainz's only really hope of taking points from this game. But it's one of those fixtures where you're not entirely sure why it's been kind of. I mean, you understand to the extent why, because obviously Bayern have a huge international following, so their fans obviously want to watch their games. But if you're trying to sell the league to neutrals or people who don't really follow German football or who think it's just it's already kind of wrapped up 5 weeks into the season, and they're probably going to sit down and watch Bayern kind of rack up a pretty high scoreline against this game. So, I mean, again, Mainz are undoubtedly another side who desperately needed that international break. They are currently on a 12-game winless run, which, interestingly enough, is 4 games off their worst run ever in the Bundesliga. Do you know who their head coach was at the time when they were on that the worst winless run ever?
Mainz, Klopp.
Yeah, Klopp.
They went down that year too, right?
Yeah, 2016, 2007. No, sorry, 2006, 2007. They went 16 games on without a win.
Yeah.
So it's looking worrying for them, and this is kind of what happens under Bo Svensson. They either kind of Jekyll or Hyde. But yeah. Only thing I'd really add to this is that I know our good friend Matt Ford is going to this game. We'll hopefully have him on the show on Monday. And while there might not be a huge amount to take from this from a Bayern perspective, we might be able to dive into what's going wrong at Mainz if we get a chance.
And that's actually, a really good point, because we haven't really talked much about Mainz this season. And I've mentioned it before the international break that they are one of the clubs I'm worried about, right? In terms of more established Bundesliga sides that could go down this year. I have Mainz firmly on that list. It just doesn't seem quite right. Having said that, they're probably going to shock us now and get a point off Bayern or something like that. All right, so next game, Köln against Gladbach. This is the Rheinderby, the real Rheinderby. And I actually... If you want to have more on this game, I wrote my entire Substack about it this week, because it is the Rhineland in general fascinates me, Stefan, as a Bavarian. It's a very strange concept, even for someone who grew up in Germany. The whole idea that all these cities are located just like 20, 30 minutes from one another, yet they refuse to visit one another. It's just a really strange thing. I mentioned it in the Substack, so if you want to read about it, but like, I have a friend of mine who lives just outside of Köln, and he's married to a Japanese girl. There's a huge Japanese colony in Düsseldorf, right? It's the largest Japanese population in a city outside of Japan. And she had to beg him to go to Düsseldorf for Japanese food, and she was homeless, crazy homeless. She just wanted some good Japanese food, right? Refused for weeks to set foot into the city of Düsseldorf. This is how nuts these people are. Anyways, that tells you everything you need to know about this derby, Köln against Gladbach. Köln and Gladbach really don't like one another. And I think in terms of atmosphere, that's going to be really reflective, right? In terms of what's going to go on the field, I think that Köln are in enormous trouble. We spent some time last Monday with Matt Ford talking about Köln and all the problems that they're going through right now, and it really doesn't look good. I think the only positive at the moment is that despite all the negativity, it's staying surprisingly calm in Müngersdorf. So that is maybe one little upside, but I don't know, Stefan. Köln desperately need a point or win. Actually, they need to win this game, right? They just have 1 point from 7. But I just don't think they're going to get it. I think Gladbach are going to edge this. I think Gladbach aren't in a great place either, but it's quite obvious that they're in this kind of transition phase, and it's kind of by design that where they are, and I think they're going to be fine in the long run. I can't say the same about Köln.
Yeah, I completely agree. I kind of did a preview of sorts in the Monday Bulletin newsletter, which is our free newsletter for anyone who wants to sign up. It goes out every Monday morning on Gladbach, and I did take note of the fact that during the international break, Gladbach played a friendly in which Manu played the full 90 minutes. He looked back to full fitness, and I basically talked about the fact that he could be a real difference maker for his Gladbach side because they are really lacking. I don't want to call him a defence midfielder. He's more of a kind of box-to-box disruptor, ball winning player. He was top of Gladbach's interceptions in the league last season, almost double than second best player. And I know they've got Julian Weigl, who's technically sitting number 6, but Coney's the guy who they really need to kind of break down opposing counterattacks. And I think that's crucial for Gladbach because they're actually 7th in the league for goals scored, so they're doing absolutely fine there. But they're 14th in the league for goals conceded, or by that I mean they've got the 14th worst record in terms of conceding goals. So they really need to find a way to kind of block those kind of plays towards their own goal. And I think if Coney starts in this game, it could be a big turning point for the Foles. So yeah, I think it'd be a tight match, but I've gone for a 2-1 win for Gladbach.
All right, we're in agreement here, full agreement here. All right, final game is Heidenheim against Augsburg. What do you think here?
So Heidenheim have really impressed me of sorts so far this season. I mean, I know they lost their last game prior to international break 2-0 to Frankfurt, which burst my coupon and I was furious about. But sitting 10th after 7 games is really impressive, right alongside Darmstadt, of course. And they're playing an Augsburg side who, as we talked about on the main show, actually have replaced their head coach. And I kind of mentioned how if you kind of look at Augsburg's underlying numbers, they've actually were playing quite well under the previous head coach. Obviously, the results weren't going their way. I think anyone who watched that 2-1 defeat to Darmstadt, which seems to be the kind of straw that broke the camel's back. Darmstadt scored with one truly bonkers volley of a goal and then, of course, a penalty. So basically my point was that obviously you bring in a head coach to try and improve things if they're bad, but if you bring in a head coach to try and turn around your luck, but the team's actually playing quite well, you can have a negative impact where you change something that's working quite well and it just kind of gets worse. So it'd be really interesting to see how Augsburg do under the new head coach. But I've actually decided to stick my neck out and go for a 2-1 win here for Heidenheim because I think they've done okay.
Tip as well.
Yeah, they've already beaten Union and Bremen at home so far this season. Yeah. They were really unfortunate not to beat Hoffenheim actually in the start of the season at home as well. So they look quite formidable in front of their own fans. And yeah, I think this Augsburg team are a bit of a mess right now.
Yeah, no, I that's exactly my tip. I went for 2-1 for Heidenheim as well. We have to mention this is a derby of sort. Those two places are not far from one another, right? And they're both Swabians. It's important to point out as well.
Debatable.
But Heidenheim, I point this out every time I talk about Augsburg. But I think the Thorup hire is actually a really interesting one by Augsburg. But as you said, I don't know if they actually needed to make this change. And we wondered on the main show whether that was due to ownership and or the hidden ownership or the investor or whatever you want to call it. But needless to say, I think Heidenheim just have been very impressive this season already, and I think this is the sort of game that they will just relish, and I think they're gonna get all 3 points here, which is obviously going to be huge for them, right? So full agreement here with you. I also went for a 2-1 Heidenheim win. That does it. That's our predictions for this, Matchday 8 after the international break. And enjoy it. It's going to be nice to be back with it. Really looking forward to tuning in for the Friday fixture, Dortmund against Bremen. I'm really curious to see how Füllkrug does. And I'm going to change my fantasy team as soon as we get off the show. As always, it's brought to you in association with BetOnline. And actually, it's sponsored by BetOnline and in association with Get Your Football News. I can't speak. Anyway, Stefan, it's been a long week.
It's the end of the week, and the Bundesliga is here.
The Bundesliga is here, thank God. We'll be back soon. Want to remind you to check out the WhatsApp channel. We're on Blue Sky, we're on Threads. If you are still on X, formerly known as Twitter, that's cool too. You can find us still there for now. Any final thoughts before wrap it up, Stefan?
No, I think you covered most of it there.
Cool. All right. Until next time. Auf Wiedersehen.
Kein Ende in Sicht.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.